In for the National Hurricane Center. No big surprises in that the winds continue to come down at this hour as the center kind of meanders over southeastern Texas. Maximum winds now listed at 45 miles per hour. But again, in our part of the world, wind not going to be the part of the much of the story, although we have seen a fairly significant number of power outages in southeastern Texas. I think now numbering in the hundreds of thousands over that way. So wind was a part of the storm in southeastern Texas, but expected to be much less of an issue here in our part of the world. The center is just kind of meandering northeast right now. It's looks like it's a little bit east of Houston and just barely onshore. Not too worried about it getting back offshore, regardless of what exactly happens here with the center. It's just the rainfall is going to be the concern going forward. We're certainly in on some pretty good rains at this hour across parts of the area. So let's give you a look at that 10 a.m. advisory. Maximum winds at 45 miles per hour, moving to the northeast at 6. Small area here around the state line, Sabine Pass, still under a tropical storm warning. But again, the wind not going to be an issue for much longer. So the official forecast does just show this slowly drifting east over the next couple of days. So notice the end point here is Thursday, 7 p.m. So this could very well be meandering out to our west over the next couple of days, which isn't great news. But I'm going to show you coming up in a few minutes why that may seem very concerning, obviously, to have a center lingering out to our west where some dry air may help us out, even if this stays out to our west. So don't let that alarm you too much. We'd rather just get this moving on out, obviously, but it may not be quite as bad as it looks on that forecast track. Here's a look at Doppler radar this morning, and you can already see that dry air that's in play here across Texas out into the Gulf of Mexico with all the rain displaced off to the east of the circulation. There's some pretty strong wind shear in place that's really just kind of ripping the rains away from the center and certainly delivering them here in south and southeast Louisiana, but even here around Lake Charles where there are concerns about some heavy rain today and getting in on some drier air right now. So it's going to be a tricky element to the forecast is the progression of this dry air. So that's why I say as the center kind of moves east with time, we could see some of this drier air gradually filtering in as well. So even if it's lingering out to our west, that may not look as bad as you think at face value. But right now, we're in on some moderate to heavy rain across much of the area. Heaviest has been south of I-10 so far this morning, but picking up around Metro Baton Rouge over the last hour or so. We can see here the yellows indicating moderate to occasionally some heavy rain here with the pockets of red that are showing up. So it's a pretty good rain coming down at this hour across much of Metro Baton Rouge. Take you north of the capital city, it's more light to moderate rain right now near and north of the state line. And as I said, along the coast and our coastal parishes, it's been more of a steady rain now for several hours, and at times it's been some pretty heavy rain coming down. This is where some of our heaviest rains have come down so far this morning. Obviously, this is just not needed. And down here, Terrebonne, Lafourche parishes especially hardest hit areas, but that is where we're getting some of the heaviest rain right now from around Port Fourchon, Galliano, Grand Isle, Cocodrie, Dulac, extending up to Houma, and on some moderate to occasionally heavy rains. Same story up Assumption, St. James, so certainly don't need that. We actually do have a flood advisory around Metro Baton Rouge. I think this runs until 11:30 this morning. Sometimes referred to as kind of a street flood advisory. So with the rain intensity picking up a bit over the last hour or so and more to come, we could start to see a little bit of street flooding in some areas. So be alert for that. We're not talking about major flooding that's threatening homes type stuff, but at least some street flooding possible over the next hour or two with that rainfall. This is the estimated rainfall just since midnight. So as you look at the scale here, where you start to get into the darker blues, that's 1.5 inches. The greens are where you see the pockets of green, those are 2 inches or more. So we have had some isolated pockets of 2 to 3 inch rains so far since midnight. But for most areas, it's been under 2 inches of rain, maybe 1.5 inches or less in many areas. Sampled a few locations around Baton Rouge near the airport, estimating about 2/3 of an inch of rain, maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of an inch of rain up here around Liberty, Mississippi. We have seen some somewhat heavier rains through the morning, especially just west of Baton Rouge. So those of you in West Baton Rouge, parts of Iberville, Point Coupee, parts of West Feliciana, St. Landry, St. Martin parishes, and then over to Acadiana and Lafayette certainly have seen some heavier rains. And as we take it south, again, we've got some pockets of green, heavier rain showing up around Galliano, so we have seen a little more of the way of rainfall in our coastal parishes. Flash flood watch in effect for all of southeast Louisiana and our counties in southwest Mississippi through 7 a.m. on Thursday. West of the Atchafalaya Basin, that flash flood watch is in effect through 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Here's the flood risk that's posted for today through daybreak on Wednesday. And you'll note this 4 out of 4 high risk that the Weather Prediction Center posted from near Lake Charles back to around Beaumont, Texas. So there's 4 out of 4 high risk. Those are somewhat rare. I think they're issued on something like 4% of days in any given year. But these days produce historically 44% of our flood-related fatalities and 86% of our flood-related damages monetarily. So these are a really big deal typically. But as I was showing you on radar, already seeing some drier air kind of moving into some of that high-risk area. So fingers crossed, maybe the news will work out a little bit better than expected there. But as you come east, 3 out of 4 from Acadiana into much of southeast Louisiana, including Baton Rouge. So a 3 out of 4 moderate risk today. North of Baton Rouge, it's a 2 out of 4 slight risk. And then as we extend this into tomorrow, Weather Prediction Center pretty much had just about all of our viewing area under a 3 out of 4 moderate risk Wednesday into Thursday morning, and even into Thursday, a 2 out of 4 slight risk. So it's going to be a multi-day event, although it looks like the worst of it today into maybe a part of tomorrow before perhaps a little bit of improvement, hopefully during the second half of the day on Wednesday. I'll give you a look at the updated rainfall outlook from NOAA's Weather Prediction Center. Now, this was released overnight. We'll get an updated version of this afternoon. And you might see some changes made to this given the trends that we've seen so far this morning. You might see some of the placement of the heavier rains a little bit closer to Metro Baton Rouge than what is shown. And we might see a little bit less in southwest Louisiana, but ultimately they were showing this is the next 3 days through Friday morning, anywhere from 4 to as much as 10 inches of rain across most of our area. So if you can make out kind of the mid shades of orange, kind of on the I-10, I-12 corridor, they were showing 4 to 7, sort of the darker orange to almost red from New Orleans down through St. Charles, Lafourche, Terrebonne, St. Mary, Iberia, St. Martin into Lafayette. That was the 7 to 10 inch rains as shown. But again, there's some uncertainty. So just have in mind that general idea of anywhere from 4 to 10 inches of rain forecast over the next few days. All right, let me give you a look at one model perspective here on the future radar. So we'll go from now with some of these moderate to heavy rains impacting the area. We'll advance it at noon. See maybe a few lulls or slight breaks, but still some pockets of heavy rain showing up. And then it shows some additional heavy rain potentially moving in later this afternoon. This is at 5 o'clock. You can see some of that heavy stuff showing up and some other pockets of heavier rain. But Baton Rouge to Lafayette looks like pretty socked in late afternoon. Tonight, some of that rain continues, and you can see some of these rain bands setting up. Those certainly possible producing very heavy rain. So that's midnight tonight. Then as we advance it into the overnight, you see that band moving east, maybe another moving in close to daybreak. This is 5 a.m. But you can already see on our model here some of that drier air starting to show up near the circulation. So that's where I'm at least somewhat optimistic, maybe 24 hours or so from now. Fingers crossed that maybe we can start to get some of that drier air involved, and there's still going to be rain, but maybe it'll make it a little less widespread and lower the intensity a bit. So that's close to daybreak tomorrow on future radar, and you see how it takes the more widespread, more steady, heavy rain off to our east. This is 10 a.m. Wednesday. You see that. It still has some rain bands rotating through, but the more widespread stuff, it's kind of sliding it east as that dry air really punches in from the west, and the wind shear maybe even kind of yanks some of the rain off to the east. And we still are in and out of showers and storms during the day on Wednesday. but under a trend like this, we might get more, rains might be more productive, more efficient today and tonight, and then maybe not as widespread on the heavy rain into the day tomorrow, but it does still keep some around late tomorrow and even headed into Thursday. So from that particular model, HRRR, here's what it generates in terms of rain totals. And let me back this up. We lose the data at the end. I apologize. The model run ends and the data drops off. But let me just back it up and get back on screen. So you kind of see on that model at least how actually some of the heavier totals are a little bit inland. So the Weather Prediction Center kind of had the heaviest totals in the coastal parishes. This model has them inland. But, you know, there's a little bit of, could be truth in both, because so far this morning, the heavier rain totals have been the coastal parishes. But if the model is right, we might get some of those heavy rains building inland. So what you see here, as you look at the scale, where you hit orange, that's at least 4 inches. Where you hit red, that's 5. And even though Baton Rouge, right there in the city, it shows, you know, 5 to 6 inches of rain, we get some pockets of purple showing up. That's 7, 8 inches plus of rain showing up on the model. So it does have a pretty good area of 4 to 8 inch rainfall through late Wednesday into early Thursday. So it's not far off from what the Weather Prediction Center says and shows. Maybe some slight differences in placement, but the key takeaway is there: 4 to 8, 4 to 10 inches of rainfall across much of the area. Now, let me give you a look at another model, the graph model. I've kind of added on what we call the isobars. So each circle, each line is a line of equal atmospheric pressure, barometric pressure, if you will. So that's the center right now, just east of Houston, and it shows the rains continuing this afternoon. That's 1 o'clock this afternoon. It kind of late this afternoon and evening kind of keeps a push of heavy rain in the coastal parishes and not so much inland. So again, you get into some of these model differences that are pretty difficult to forecast in the short term, but it still has the center. Here's the center sitting around Sabine Pass, but look at that dry air punching in and that potential difference that can make. That's 7 o'clock this evening, but locally we're still in on the rains. Into daybreak tomorrow, it still has the center kind of sitting somewhere near Lake Charles, some rain bands rotating through, but not real widespread, right? And then into the day tomorrow, it's got the center still kind of meandering around Lake Charles, but since it has that drier air getting involved, even though, that's why I say, even under a scenario where maybe the center parks itself out to our west over the next couple of days, it may not be as bad as you might think. Still, we'd rather get this thing off to our east. There's still going to be some rain bands, but it looks like there's going to be some dry air involved in this as well, beginning by tomorrow. So we'll see what happens with that. But this actually does take the center back over the Gulf. Again, I know that probably gets your attention. I wouldn't worry about that too much. But you note, while it has the center spinning out to our west and it's still generating some rain, it's not going gangbusters with the rain. It's kind of these passing bands because hopefully some of that dry air is involved. Now again, you see the differences as we look at different models. It does hit the coastal parishes harder. It's got more of that 4 to 8, maybe 4 to 10 inch rain, more focused in the coastal parishes, lighter totals inland. So there's still some uncertainty on the placement of the heaviest rains. But that's why it's kind of better to maybe look at that Weather Prediction Center map than any individual model run. The Weather Prediction Center, being that it's human involvement, they consider multiple models and there's expertise that's thrown in. So that general idea of anywhere from 4 to 10 inches of rain, and we just have to monitor where the heaviest rains and rain bands set up over the next 24 hours especially. All right, within the last hour or so, we did get some updated river forecasts from the River Forecast Center. If you're with me on 9 this morning, I mentioned that these numbers would probably come up, and they did. So let me talk about what we've got here. A key point is these river forecasts have included about 48 hours of rainfall going forward. Right now, it looks like over the Amite and Comite basins and the Tickfaw and Tangipahoa as well. It looks like the River Forecast Center is included anywhere from roughly 3 to 5 inches of rain over the next 48 hours. So these forecasts are dependent on the rain, right? So if we end up with somewhere in the general idea, 3 to 5 inches of rain over these river basins, then these numbers should be in the general vicinity. But if we end up, if rain goes higher than 3 to 5 inches, which is possible, these numbers will continue to come up. So if we end up with 3 to 5 inches, it's still looking pretty good along the Amite. Denham Springs under that scenario, not even forecast to hit flood. Bayou Manchac, Port Vincent, forecast to stay below flood. French Settlement, Maurepas, we don't have forecast for them right now, but still probably wouldn't be that bad under a scenario where we get 3 to 5 inches of rain over the next 2 days. Comita Joy right now under that scenario, forecast to go up to about 19 feet, which is still about a foot below flood stage. So these rivers, they're highly contingent on how much rain comes down, but if we end up with that 3 to 5 inches of rain, the models are saying we can largely handle that. Now, if you start getting above 3 to 5, that's where you could start to see more of these rivers going into flood, okay? So we're going to have to track that closely. Tickfaw, same story. You give the river basin roughly 3 to 5 inches of rain, and you largely do okay. Liverpool, Montpelier, Holden, all staying below flood stage under that scenario. And again, Killeen, Springfield, one of those points we don't get a forecast, so we'll keep an eye on it. But right now, 3 to 5 inches, we'd be okay. Goes higher, then those numbers would be going higher. As we look at the Tangipahoa, same story here. Osika, Kentwood, Amite, all forecasts to stay below flood stage, some points well below flood. If we get that 3 to 5, Robert does get just above flood stage at 15.5. So right now, new river forecasts, a little more rainfall included this go around, but still the numbers don't look all that bad. So it's just going to depend on who gets 3 to 5 inches of rain, or do we get more like 5 to 10. If we start getting into the 5 to 10, then you're going to start seeing those river numbers going up a good bit more, and then you'll start to get into some more issues. I think Jay Grimes did a great job. I got to catch a little bit of Jay at 6 yesterday. He did emphasize, though, even under a scenario you get into maybe the 5 to 10 inches, we're not talking anywhere close to 2016. We're not looking at anything like that. But you would at least be seeing the rivers probably go into flood at some spots, and maybe even moderate flood at some locations. So we'll have to see how the rain unfolds over the next 24 hours. But at least that's somewhat of an updated outlook now from the River Forecast Center. All right, here's a look at the 10-day outlook. So I've got rain chances 100% today, around 100% tomorrow. I'm almost tempted to drop those maybe slightly on Wednesday with the potential some of that drier air getting involved. But even as this circulation that is Nicholas right now weakens over the next 24 to 36 hours, it's going to weaken because it is inland, because there is some pretty strong wind shear, because there's that dry air involved. So all of those things, what we call Nicholas right now is a tropical cyclone, should weaken it, being inland, the wind shear, the dry air. But even as it weakens, we still think there's going to be a decent amount of moisture in place, and we're going to keep rain chances kind of elevated into the weekend on the order of 60 to 70%. So we're still going to be tracking rain on into the weekend, and then you need to watch out for it. It won't be as widespread. It won't be the all-day sort of rain like we're kind of getting today. But if you get pockets of heavy rain over the weekend falling on the river basins, then that could cause additional rises. So what I'm saying here is, while the main event rain-wise is the next couple of days, there's still more to come into the weekend. And, you know, think about what happened yesterday evening. The vast majority of southeast Louisiana got less than an inch of rainfall yesterday. At my house in southeastern Baton Rouge, through about the time I laid down around 9 o'clock last night, I had a trace of rain at my house. And you only had to go probably 5 miles west of my house to Kenilworth, and we had this isolated pocket We had 3 to 5 inches of rain or more come down, and not just Kenilworth. That's just one of the bigger neighborhoods that got hit, but Kenilworth and down around Gardere as well. We had this real isolated pocket of heavy rain that developed over the south side of Baton Rouge, dumped 3 to 5 inches of rain, but you had some flooding. I think water might even gotten in a couple of homes. So that's the kind of stuff that's beyond the scope of predictability, right? You had 99% of our viewing area yesterday got under an inch of rain, but we had that one bullseye, and it happened to be in parts of Baton Rouge. So if you get those bullseyes over the weekend, happens over a river basin, then you could have some additional rises. It's kind of a long-winded way of just saying, you know, stay alert into the weekend, even though the main concern is the next couple of days. Still have good rain chances through the weekend and on into the early part of next week. A fairly active pattern looks to continue. Do remind you to keep up with everything in our First Alert Weather App interactive radar for sure, with all the rain we're in right now and expected to have the next couple of days. All the advisories, watches, and warnings in there as well. All right, graphically, that is all I had to share with you. So give me a second here, as we did yesterday. I'm going to get the Facebook pages loaded up. And if you're watching on Facebook and have any questions, see if we can answer a few of those before we wrap it up for today. And as I do that, I'm going to take a peek. Let's see. We're at 68 hundredths of an inch of rain now here at Channel 9, so it's starting to pick up and add up a little bit. All right, let's see. All right. Okay, Michael, Stephen J., when you guys speak of rainfall amounts in the Amite River flood stage, y'all appear to be speaking of the amounts for the Baton Rouge area. Are y'all taking into account the amounts of rain north of Baton Rouge? Yes. So again, that's when I was talking about what the River Forecast Center, there's a product where we can actually go look. You have to kind of get into the weeds a little bit, but you can basically see how much rain was included in their model for the river basin. And so as I looked at that product right before I started this update, they had, generally speaking, anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain over those river basins, the area that is drained by those rivers. Okay, so yes, I'm not just talking about Baton Rouge. As I showed you those river forecasts, I'm talking about the rain that is forecast for those basins and to impact those rivers directly. So right now, what the River Forecast Center used was largely on the order of about 3 to 5 inches of rain the next 48 hours. So all those river numbers we ran through are dependent on 3 to 5 inches of rain, or contingent on that in terms of the river forecast being accurate. So if the rains end up exceeding those numbers, then the river stages are going to end up higher than what is currently forecast. If the rain numbers come in lower, then they'll come in a little bit lower. But the takeaway for everybody at home is all those river forecasts I showed you are dependent on 3 to 5 inches of rain falling the next 2 days. So as you track what's happening, if you start seeing those rain numbers go up, then understand the rivers are going to end up higher as well. Unfortunately, best case, we get river forecast updates twice a day. In this case, we went 24 hours between updates. We got a forecast yesterday morning and just got one this morning. So sometimes you have to kind of watch on your own and extrapolate a little bit, but hopefully that'll give you some added knowledge to work with, okay? And of course, Jay, Jeff, myself, Jared, we'll all keep an eye on that for you too. And as we go on air and do these digital updates, we'll try to give you that information as well. Yeah, I apologize. I probably needed to talk a little bit more about this, and a couple of people have asked. Mark is saying highest wind gusts for Baton Rouge. Probably unlikely that we'll see much above the 20s and maybe some occasional gusts in the 30s. Wind gusts aren't expected to be a big deal because that center, the winds are already spinning down pretty quickly because it's inland, because of that wind shear and dry air that's impacting it. So winds aren't going to be a big issue outside of, as you know, if you get a storm rolling through, we could get some localized gusts there. But wind's not going to be a big issue other than understanding, sure, given that Ida just came through, there might be some loose limbs and branches, and it might take a lot less wind to take down a few more limbs, and that could cause some temporary localized power outages. I'm not expecting anything major in terms of new power outages. And the other issue is just the soggy nature. Everything's wet right now. The ground is saturated, right? So we could still get a few more trees falling, but it shouldn't be anything widespread. That should be localized. And then we still have many areas that were without power. I saw numbers out of Terrebonne Parish this morning. It was still more than 60% of the parish or customers in the parish without power, coming up on almost 2.5 weeks post-Ida. So rough times ongoing in parts of South Louisiana. Let's see, what else? Leslie says, I'm still in Texas, evacuated from Ida. What would be the best day for me to travel home? Leslie, I don't know where home is, but you know, you can probably get home as soon as tomorrow afternoon without too much of the way of major impacts. Keeping an eye on what happens today and tonight, making sure no significant flooding develops. We need to keep an eye on that. But weather-wise, things look like they could improve as soon as tomorrow afternoon, and certainly by Thursday it looks better. We're still going to have good rain chances, but it looks like in terms of the most widespread rain, it's today, tonight, into the early part of Wednesday. And then I think by tomorrow afternoon, hopefully become a little more scattered. And certainly Thursday into the weekend, while rain chances are going to be elevated, it's going to be more in the form of occasional bands rotating through and not widespread, prolonged, all-day sort of rains, if that makes sense. Yeah, so you say Walker, Leslie. So yeah, watch, keep an eye on things from Texas today, tonight, and take another look tomorrow morning to see how things are going. And then you should be able to make a decision probably by tomorrow morning, or maybe as soon as tomorrow morning, on whether you can perhaps return during the day tomorrow. And if not tomorrow, I think by Thursday, pretty good chance you'd be able to come home, assuming we don't end up with any major issues with some prolonged rain bands that produce, you know, big rain amounts. So that's what you need to check in on. All right, let's see, what if, let's see. Yeah, Michael, who had asked earlier about what rain we're including, and does that include the river basins? Where can I learn more of this? I'm not sure I understand more of what. River stages, we do have links to the river stages and forecasts on our website. If you go to wafb.com/weather, there's a link there. The river stages, I think we still have, I need to double check. We had that in our news app as well, a link to that. Hopefully that's still there. I need to double check that. So question about St. Francisville. So, you know, we're going to start getting a lot of questions about specific communities. I don't want to do too much of that. Suffice to say, we've got that, we showed that outlook of 4 to 10 inches of rain on average around the area. We went through some of the different models. There are still some differences in placement on where the heaviest occurs, but that's going to be the key. And then, you know, another key is if we can spread that out over a long enough time, then, you know, if you end up in the 4 to 6 inch range spread out over a couple of days, that's still fairly manageable in most areas. But no, you know, you can already see Look at this dry air that's already making itself shown in southwest Louisiana. Remember, this was the area that was outlined under high risk of flooding today. Right now, it looks like that may very well not verify, which is a great thing. And so this is one of the struggles in forecasting. I don't think the models are really handling this dry air very well out to our west. So a key is going to be watching the impact of that today and how quickly does that progress eastward. What sort of impact does that have? But right now, pretty socked in with the rain. But right now, we're also kind of wishing and cheering on, rooting on this dry air. Then maybe it can help us out, maybe even a little more than what the models have shown so far. So we'll be tracking that closely. All right, coming up on 10:35, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up for now. Jeff Morrow will be live on air at noon. He'll have get you through noon, 4 and 5. Jay will be back at 6 and 10. But again, we'll be here to get you through it. Continuous updates online in our app as well and on our regular newscasts. So tune in for that, and I'll be back on air for 9 News This Morning starting bright and early, 4:30 on Wednesday. See you then.